Hi, I'm Rachel Hausman. As many of you may know, my last video that I put out was on pregnancy in the workplace. As of today, my baby is officially 1 month old, and I wanted to have a conversation about balancing parenting and work. And I was told the person to talk to is Linda Tapp. So today I have Linda Tapp, and we're going to be going through some of what she has learned and her experiences in balancing parenthood and work. So let's go to you, Linda. Could you tell us a little bit about you and your background?
Sure. First, congratulations on the baby. It's always exciting. I'm sure your life is much different now than it used to be, or it will continue to change.
Yeah, absolutely.
For sure. My background is I have 3 kids now. They're all in their 20s. At one point, there were 3 under 4. So it was the chaos years, as I call it. Going back to work, I think after the first one wasn't terrible. It was a little bit of an adjustment, but I was only 3 miles from the plant that I worked in. So it was a real quick, easy back and forth. Somebody's sick, you can get home really simply. But 15 months after, I had my second child, my second daughter, and then things got really kind of crazy. It's like once you have more than one, it gets a little tougher to juggle. Even though I was close, I really wanted to work at home at least part of the time. And I tried to get some kind of hybrid deal, shared work, responsibilities. Nothing was working. So HR at that time, and it was a long time ago, wasn't doing anything like that ever. So it was basically after 6 months of trying, I'm like, all right, I have to leave and do my own thing. And that's when I started consulting. So I didn't stay in the workforce after the second. And then the following year, the number 3 was born. So it was a good thing I was already back out. So that's how it kind of started. How I managed was consulting, because with consulting, you can make your own time. And that was really what was key to me. I didn't mind working 40 hours a week. And with consulting, I was working more than 40 hours a week for sure, but you can pick the hours that you worked. So I could work at midnight, I could work at 2 a.m. It was crazy times. I laugh. It wasn't a lot of sleep, but I could definitely spend time with the family as well as, doing the consulting work and working full time.
Yeah, that's crazy. I mean, okay, so my thoughts are 3 under 4. You are ambitious both at home and at work, because that is a lot to take on.
Yeah, it was fine. But if you don't know any better, it's like, hey, this is how it goes. This is life.
Yeah. How do we manage this sort of parenthood in the workplace, and especially male dominated, or how do they like to say, male populated workplaces, where we haven't dealt with pregnancy and children and career breaks and all of that as often as, say, somebody who's in a more female dominated career field?
I think with the pregnancy part, obviously you can't hide it very long. And it is important to say something quickly, as I think you mentioned in your video you did on pregnancy, because there's so much that can happen in the beginning. You need to tell people. You can't keep it quiet. But once you come back, people tend to forget. I think that you're not sleeping like you used to sleep. You could be up all through the night. You may have to leave for a lot more doctor's appointments, since you might know babies go to the doctor a lot. There's a lot of visits that you have to do. And you're just generally tired and stressed. And if you are breastfeeding, you need to drink a lot more, stay hydrated. You need to eat a lot more and keep your calories up. So there's a lot of things that you might not think, oh, they're back to work. It's exactly like it used to be, because it's not. It's your body's still recovering, and you have to take care of yourself once you get back to work. And I think really the important thing is to ask for help, which is hard for a lot of people, including myself. Yeah. You don't want to seem like you want to ask for help and want special treatment, but people really want to help. And I think now, especially where people leave work pretty often, like the turnover rates, a lot of places are high. Companies are really willing to do what they can to keep people back. There's pumping rooms for a lot of places. There's nap pods. Depends on your company, but they really want to keep good people on the job instead of making life hard for them.
Do you have any recommendations on how you would even ask for help?
I think first, your immediate supervisor is a really good place to start. And I've been lucky to have relationships with people before I left my own that I could really talk to and say, I'm exhausted. I slept 2 hours last night. And just don't try to do anything above and beyond. I think especially women try to really go up more than they have to do all the time. And it's just, for that time period, you just have to accept that you're not going to be the superstar that you were, for a little while. If you need to take it easy and just do your job and not work late hours, or, be that superstar performer employee, you need to just take a little bit of a break. And that's really hard for me and a lot of other people as well, just to sit back and say, oh, I'm different now.
I'm new to this because I just became a parent, obviously. But how does that balance with parenting? Because I'm in this a little bit already, and I don't know if with little kids, when they're young, if it's possible to really work remotely when they're home. I don't know if that's going to work out. I think having some help is going to be key, but I'd love to hear your perspective.
I think usually I had somebody in the house, like a babysitter or someone who could either entertain them, but if you have a separate room with the door, to shut, just like people say during COVID, people have to really learn to say, okay, I'm working now, mommy's working now, the door is shut, you can't come in, or the light's on. People use lights to keep people out of their work areas. I mean, it's never going to be perfect. I even have that now with grown people in my house because during COVID, everybody was home. So suddenly someone would walk up behind you, what's for dinner? It's still going to happen, but it's tough. I always had a lot of, let's say like quick toys or quick activities. Here, go do this. Like I had a little backup plan of supplies to distract them if they got really rowdy at the moment. And then people didn't do video calls. So it was all off camera. I could be on the phone. So they really can't see what you're doing with your other hand, giving stuff to a kid to keep them quiet on the side. But now it's a little trickier with the camera's always on.
Yeah, I actually had my first Zoom meeting the other day where I didn't have any help. So it's just me and the baby at home, and I didn't want to cancel this Zoom meeting. And it was pretty informal anyway. But it's like I'm holding the baby. He gets kind of fussy. He spits up on me mid-meeting. It's just not ideal. And of course, with Zoom meetings and everything being on camera, there's a new challenge to that as well.
It is definitely more welcome. So I've been on so many calls where you see lots of pets. Especially, you'll see a toddler climb on a lap, but lots of pets during COVID, especially. I think I know everybody's cats, dog, walking across the desks and, things that you wouldn't normally do. And it's kind of nice too. You get to know the person more than you would otherwise if you just met in person. Like I'd never know someone had 3 cats who crawled all over them all day long. So I do think it makes people a little more connected too.
Yeah, that's interesting because I think I've seen more pets than kids at this point.
For sure. Yeah, it was that. I think back at things I used to do. Kids were, I won't say under the table, but under the desk playing a lot of the times. So they were nearby, which is fine. And mute on the phone is a really important button.
But that's good to know because I think I would prefer not to mix the two just because it would make me nervous and distract me. But like I said, I'm 1 month in and have already had a situation where the baby was on the call. And luckily it was informal, it was fine, but it's just another thing to manage on top of work.
Yeah, I think the baby part's easier than the toddler part. once they're babies, you can kind of get quiet, but toddlers, I don't know if you're gonna have time to reason with them or give them the discussion, but they're a lot more climby. They can go all over, they can get in the camera, they can unplug things, they can really cause more havoc than a baby can. So the toddler part will be more interesting for you, I think. How I managed was consulting, because with consulting, you can make your own time. And that was really what was key to me. I didn't mind working 40 hours a week. And with consulting, I was working more than 40 hours a week for sure, but you could pick the hours that you worked. So I could work at midnight, I could work at 2 a.m. It was crazy times. I laughed, but it wasn't a lot of sleep, but I could definitely spend time with the family as well as doing the consulting work and working full time.
That's really good advice. I think back, so about 5 years ago, I went out on my own and I started doing general consulting remotely before people really did that, because the remote work didn't become mainstream until COVID. So now it's so much more easy to get a role like that, which is great. And I'm really happy for people. But for me, and in my perspective, starting to consult, whether in person or remotely, and building up that client base took me about a year. Mm-hmm. And I think that's standard unless you have some group that you really know well already that can just slot you into a certain place. Mm-hmm. How long do you think you would advise people to?
I'd say, at least 6 months.
One thing that has come up in the last few years that I think is really useful and really interesting are all the freelancer websites. So you've got Fiverr, you've got Upwork, and also Yellowbird, which is mostly freelance safety, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's what I believe. I'm not that familiar with Yellowbird, but I know people that do work through them.
Yeah. So I'm not as familiar with Yellowbird either, but I started my consulting when I was traveling and things like that on Upwork. And I think at the time I was the only one who was really pound in the sand and Upwork and really making that happen. Now there are more safety professionals on Upwork, but again, it takes a while to build up that client base, but that can be a great way to make money either on the side or to stay busy when you do have a kid and need more flexibility. You went from more of a traditional employed safety role to a consulting role, correct?
Yes. Yep. Started off, how I did that. I think it was a lot of my contacts. I had been very active, and I'm still super active in ASSP, but I had been very active locally in AIHA and ASSP. So I had contacts in consulting firms, and they knew that I was going out on my own. So a lot of it started as a subcontractor. It's like, oh, we need another body. We need this person here. And that's really how I started getting clients and working. And another way that I found a few clients, which is, we'll see what you think about this idea, was I'd look at the newspaper, which people would read the newspaper for job ads then, and someone would look to hire a safety person. And I would email them and say, I'm a consultant, would you consider me? And very often, instead of hiring someone, they would take a consultant instead. And I think for them, it was a lot less risky for them, because they could just say, we don't like you, go, and they not actually, instead of having to go through the whole process, they would take me on as a consultant. So I had some really nice early on consulting work just by following these ads, these help wanted ads. I talk a lot about product development and multiple streams of income to a lot of people. And that's one of the big reasons that I encourage everybody to write some kind of book or have some kind of product. Not just having babies, but people leave work to take care of parents, elder care. People might have an accident where they can't work for a year. Like, you need a backup. In my case, I moved out of my husband's job to London, then Munich, then Amsterdam. So I could not have had a regular job. Like, you need something to fill those holes when you're traveling. So anybody can do a product and have that extra stream of income. You just have to start planning for it. And I always say, plant the tree before you need the shade. Like, I encourage people to start it before you're in that situation. Even if you lose your job, you don't want to have nothing. You need to have something to kind of fill the holes. I go saying at least 6 months. With the products too, like, once you have this book, that's a great way to get consulting work. I was telling somebody yesterday, instead of sending people your brochure, your marketing information, you mail them your book, and it gives you this expert status level. Even if you self-publish a book, it really helps you to get your foot in the door when you're looking for, starting consulting work especially. So it could be an ebook, it could be anything, but people really should plan on having something there that they could physically use and share when they're not a regular, technically regular full-time employee.
That makes sense. So like for me, I've got all these online safety courses that I do, and we do written programs and templates and things like that. Are you thinking mostly digital products? Because I like digital products, but that's just my perspective.
Digital's easy. Actually, yesterday, I taught the class on how to sell what you know. That's what I did yesterday. And we covered 20 different products over 4 hours and helped people get their ideas. But digital's easy. You can do it yourself, upload it yourself, never leave your house, especially if you have kids at home. That's all stuff that you can do.
Yeah, so you can really prepare your career then if you have multiple streams of income. And I think, in my experience, that's something you can start on the side while you're still working a full-time job.
Yeah, for sure. And just, as I said, have it ready to go, because you never know. You could lose your job. You could suddenly be out. You can have it all set up. You don't want to waste the first 6 months that you're out of work for whatever reason, setting up all the business part of it. You can do all that before you're ready to actually use it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think a lot of people who see this video will probably default to thinking it's more of a motherhood type of plan. But I'm seeing so many more guys in the workplace, even in male-dominated workplaces, like engineers, foremen, all of them you're seeing more and more dads step away to have some time with the kids. Or to be that stable.
Yeah, I think they all apply to guys as well, right? Like, there's no reason why everybody can't do this. Regardless of your sex, if you're leaving work for any of those reasons, elder care, child care, trailing spouse, accidents, anything like that, I think it's always good to have this backup plan.
What about career breaks? Because I chose not to take a full-on break. What advice would you give to people who are looking into that? Because that's a scary thing when you look at what you could potentially miss out on. And then how do you get back in when you're ready?
Go back. I think for the breaks, in addition to the products, I think you have to keep networking the whole time and keeping in touch with your connections. It's so easy now to network because of all the social media sites, with LinkedIn and Facebook. You can really keep in touch with anybody that you've ever worked with, still share your ideas, still contribute, and people would probably never even realize that you were, not working full time, that you were on a break. And I think you don't want to disappear completely, like ever. You still need to stay on top of things because things change a lot in a year or two. Even safety changes a lot. So you really need to keep up on what's going on and make that effort. And then coming back, you still have your contacts that are strong. I think the worst thing to get is an email from somebody or message on LinkedIn saying, I'm out of a job, can you help me? And I've never heard of them ever before. Like you get to do touch from total strangers. It's like, I wish I knew you a little better because then I could probably help you. So I just think you have to keep all those connections, the best that you can. And with social media, you could sit there with a baby on your lap and stay on LinkedIn if you had to. It doesn't take a ton of extra time.
That's a really good idea. I haven't thought of that before, but just looking at it, and the people that I know on LinkedIn who are active, I would have no idea if they didn't have like a full-time job, but I know them better than so many other professionals because they post and they're interacting and they're out there talking to people.
And they still know your expertise, right? So if a job comes up later when you're ready to go back to work, they'll think, oh, I know Rachel, she does this. And they probably wouldn't even realize that you weren't there full time. I did talk to a couple of recruiters about how bad is it to have a gap on your resume. And they said, tech companies will tell you that they don't care so much anymore like they used to. You couldn't have like a 2 or 3 year gap, but they really do. They still kind of think, oh, what were they doing for 3 years? So the product stuff can also fill that in. You can say, wrote this book, developed this product during those 2 or 3 year periods. So it can help plug in those holes in your resume.
One thing that I would like to point out, I'm not sure if everybody's aware of, but some of the certification companies will also let you take a year-long break and take a year off of paying for your certification. So if you're in a financially tight spot, you can reach out to the BCSP and say, hey, I'm taking a 1 year break for kids or for whatever reason, and you can get that deferred for 1 year. And I think you get one per certification or something like that.
I think, and also ASSP does a hardship waiver as well. During COVID, there were a lot of people who lost their job. They could get a hardship waiver and be covered until they got back on their feet again. So yeah, there's no reason not to stay. And I have been with WISE for a jillion years, and I laugh way back before WISE was WISE. We used to get women together just by putting signs in the bathrooms saying, we're going to meet for coffee after the conference, because there was no women anywhere. So that's where we'd hang out and recruit people. And we started meeting at Starbucks or wherever. And then it got bigger and bigger because that's where you find the support and that's where you find out what to do. Like, I wasn't going to ask most people I worked with. My very first job, I was the only woman of a whole department of insurance guys. Like, you weren't going to ask people, hey, how do I do this? How do I balance this? So having that group like WISE and Women in the Workplace to really ask, they've done it. Like, I've done it. I'm happy to share my advice with anybody. But I think that's what you need, is a network of people who have gone through the same things. And you don't have to figure it out by yourself, right? Someone's done it before. People have been having babies and working for a long time. So you just find those people and you find that group that you can get advice from.
Yeah, that's great advice. I never knew that was kind of the origin of WISE. I think that's so great.
A long time ago, but there was just not women. I'd go to the bathrooms, that's where you'd find them. So I was like super young, but that's where you had to really recruit women to talk to and learn more about.
Thank you so much, Linda. I've really enjoyed this, and I appreciate your time.
Good luck. If you need help, questions, ask me. So I'm here. So.
If you get a panicked email,
that's okay. Panic text message. Like, yeah, just let me know.
Well, awesome. Well, thank you so much. And thank you everybody for watching. And until the next time, we'll see you guys later.